Hi, everybody, it's Peter, and I am going to be talking today about why gentrification might actually help more than it harms. This question sort of came up in a 2002 article by David Mechanic, in which he asks whether it makes sense to stop the advance of medical technology in the name of health disparities and health equity. And the argument goes like this: as technologies advance and we developed new and better ways of making diagnoses that are non-invasive and improving the safety of healthcare and medicine, that the wealthy and predominantly white populations within the United States have disproportionate access to these technologies, and that increases health disparities. Well, of course, he's not asking this question seriously, because these technologies ultimately, over time, will benefit everybody in the population. It just takes a little bit of time. And eradicating the medical advances in the name of equity will actually only cause harm to everybody in society, including populations of color and populations who have lower income. So we don't want to do that. And the same is kind of true of gentrification. You know, we want to build parks and neighborhoods to make them healthier and more walkable, but at the same time, those improvements are going to lead to displacement and inequality, and they're going to disproportionately benefit wealthier populations. So let's take a quick look at the big picture here. Let's look at the United States as a whole and its progress in health over time. So we're looking at the reasons why the United States may be declining with respect to health over time. So let's first look at this from the perspective of 45-year-old women. This is the group who has suffered the largest decline in health over time. And what we're looking at here are a number of countries, including the United States over here on the left and Switzerland over here on the right. And on the axes, you see per capita health expenditures in 1975 dollars and percent surviving 15 years. And what we are looking at here is the United States is kind of an outlier in respect to having poor survival. So 45-year-old women are less likely to make it to their 60th birthday than in any other nation, and health expenditures are second only to Switzerland. By 2005, the situation has radically changed. The United States has barely budged in terms of survival for 45-year-old women, but health costs have increased dramatically. So why might this be? Well, one explanation is the healthcare system itself. So this is a look at health of Americans over time, and we saw that between 1975 and 2005, and you can see why we picked those years now, health was generally improving amongst the average American. Since then, it started down on a decline. And here we see another statistic. This is compensation after health expenditures in thousands of 2006 dollars for the median household. We're seeing that that is happening in parallel, that there's a parallel decline in after healthcare expenditure compensation. What does that mean? It means disposable income is declining for the median household in the United States. Yikes. So let's turn our attention away from 45-year-old women and look at the nation as a whole in the same general period. Here you see that life expectancy between 1961 and 1983 has generally been improving. That's all the white areas. But there are some rural counties and southern counties where it's declining. That's unprecedented in a time where there's no war and no global pandemic. That's a little scary. But then you look at the end of the period of interest here. This is right before things really started to get bad. 1983 to 1999, you see that a huge number of counties realized no improvement in health, and we're actually seeing declines in life expectancy across swaths of the South. Okay, so let's return to this example and remember that the United States is experiencing an increase in healthcare expenditures over time while not really seeing any improvement in survival up to 2005. After 2005, things just really go to hell. So by 2014, life expectancy is declining for everybody. There's something really wrong here. One explanation, let's just focus on 45-year-old women again, is smoking. But it actually turns out that relative to our peer nations, rates of smoking are declining faster in the United States. That can't be the explanatory variable. A lot of people are thinking obesity. Same story for obesity. While Americans were obese in 1975, the increase in obesity was greater in peer nations than it was in the United States. Okay, so let's rank some causes here. Here we see that being uninsured accounts for a relatively low burden of disease. What do I mean by that? I mean that overall, the number of years of perfect health lost to anything was relatively low for being uninsured, relatively low for being overweight, and it was relatively moderate for being obese. Bigger risk factors were lacking a high school diploma and the related risk factor, living below the poverty line. Smoking was a major risk factor here. But remember, smoking and obesity are declining over time and can't really explain what we're seeing. So let's turn our attention now to neighborhood conditions. So what might be explaining this huge burden of disease in the lower income Americans, and how might we address that? And if we do address it, will we be addressing some of these bigger health problems that we're seeing in the United States? Low-income neighborhoods, undoubtedly dangerous, many of them are undoubtedly unpleasant in terms of the physical environment, lots of decay, hazardous health conditions. This is a picture of the Bronx in the 1970s, early 1970s. Here's a picture of another neighborhood in the Bronx. And this is just one corner taken over 3 periods of time, early 1970s, late 1970s, 1980s. You just see how the conditions are really deteriorating. Now, what can we do about that? Well, we can intervene. Here is a picture of an intervention in China. This is a garden that was built by the government using the principles of feng shui. I think we're pretty far away from that in terms of improving neighborhood conditions. But let's see what we can do. So what does America look like? America looks like this. Very wide lanes, sparse, boxy, low-rise corporate buildings. And if you want to get from here to here, you really are going to get into your car, take a U-turn here, drive all the way down here, take another U-turn, and then go there. You're not going to walk that distance because you're going to be under a lot of direct heat, and it's going to be very unpleasant, unaesthetically pleasing. What might we do to get people to, get out of their cars? Well, we can put in a tram system. The tram system can go under the roads at intersections, or it can get right-of-way lights. It can maybe get people a little bit faster, maybe get some people on it. That's really not going to do the trick, though. You need something else. One of the something else is shade, so building medians with trees where people can walk from point A to point B. That's going to help a little bit, but you can see most people are still going to be in their car. How do we radically re-envision this? Well, we have to think about pedestrian-centered, walking-centered communities with low-rise housing and storefront properties. So let's just take a look at this stark contrast again. And now we ask ourselves, okay, well, if we take these kinds of radical steps, what's going to happen? Well, one thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get resistance just because you're going to get resistance no matter what you do. right? So you get political resistance. You put in bike lanes, and people are anti-bike lane, and you do this and that, and people are anti this and that. But there is a force that is legitimate, which is that people in low-income neighborhoods who are paying low rents are legitimately afraid of being displaced by higher rents. So as immigrant communities move in, they become safer. As artists move in, because these neighborhoods are now safer, they open galleries and cafes, which then attracts wealthy people who then open banks, and now you've got an unpleasant community to live in once again. So how do you create a balance? That is really what the discussion in class is going to be today.